you all to the second episode of Sync Guest Lecture Series brought to you by Synergy, the annual technical symposium of Mechanical Engineering Department of NIT Trichy. Today, we'll be syncing with our most recently graduated alumni, Shivani. She is currently working as a software engineer at Microsoft and has been accepted into deferred MBA programs at not just one, but in 3 of the world's best business schools. She is a recipient of various scholarships, namely Cargill Global Scholarship, TechMaker Women's Google Scholarship, Grace Hopper's Conference India Scholarships. She has an impeccable technical experience of working at Rubrik, Microsoft, and machine learning startups. Without much ado, I welcome her to this, and let's start with it. Hi, Shivani. First of all, what made you interested in MBA?
Hi, Anmol. Firstly, I think this initiative by Synergy is a great one because you have someone to walk you through this entire process that they've been through. And, you know, people who are seeing this are going to be like, if someone like me could do it, then so can I. So thanks to Synergy for doing this and for giving me the opportunity to share my experience with all of you. So why was I interested in MBA? I think there are a multitude of factors that go behind it, right? First, I think is a lot of introspection which happened, be it in terms of what I enjoy doing and what I have an intuition that I will be good at through the 4 years of my college, be it in the different roles of responsibility in the clubs or during my experience in internships. That said, I believe that, you know, you have to have a strong engineering experience. If you see, all of my internships have been in completely programming roles, and I have no business experience till now, if you see. But still, I had this intuition that I enjoy doing more managerial responsibilities than hardcore engineering work. So that's why there was a plan of getting a formal MBA education, because that's something I don't have yet, right? All through my 4 years, everything has been only computer science education, and I felt a lack of business knowledge in myself, which was crucial to my managerial aspirations. So I thought an MBA would be like the perfect thing to fill what is lacking in me, and that's primarily why I wanted to do an MBA.
Okay, I hope this will be more clear to more people who are going to be thinking about MBA. Secondly, is there a reason why you chose a deferred MBA program and not Masters in Finance or Masters in Management?
Yeah, I think there are 2 reasons to this. One is, very honestly, like when I came to college, my family made it clear that at the end of 4 years, I was supposed to start working. That we were not in a position to really, you know, afford the expensive higher education that is, especially in the professional fields that we are interested in, be it in Master of Science or Masters in Management. All of those are pretty expensive, and and I also did not have any you know, urgent research aspirations as yet, even until my second year or so. And I felt it was fine to, you know, start working after college. So that is one reason why I applied to the deferred MBA program, which lets me work for a while and save up before going abroad and get those expensive education. Another thing I believe is I've had the fortune of having many mentors throughout college in the form of juniors, seniors, and my managers during internships, who have shown me how important experience is before you get business education. Only when you work for at least a couple of years or more do you make more value of the business education that you're going to get later, because you'll be able to relate more to all your rich experiences that you gather. So that's another reason I was strongly convinced that experience is pretty important. And one more reason is I am happy in the job I'm doing right now. Like, it's not like I hate coding or I won't do a computer science job. I am passionate about that as well. So a combination of I'm happy with what I'm doing now, and this experience is going to help me a lot in my business education to make sense of it. And a huge factor of affordability is why I'm doing an MBA later as opposed to MIM or MEM or a Master's in Finance right now.
All right. So could you brief us through the application process?
Sure. So there are many sections in the application process, and it's pretty extensive. The first step, according to me, is to take your standardized test, be it the GMAT or the GRE. Once you're done with it, you can just, you know, keep it to the side and focus on your application. So after you take the standardized test and you send your score to the school, the next section in your application would be a section called education, where you have to submit your transcripts, give your grades. And if you see into very detail, there are many questions like, have you taken any management related courses, any finance courses, any statistics courses already? And have you done any certifications like CFA? And all these come in your education, which I think most people are not aware of. Like if you're thinking if this is worth doing today, then you have to keep in mind that these applications have things like this, which are also evaluated. So so I just want to tell it out here that education is not just what you do in college, but there are also a lot of extra things that you can do, which if properly certified are claimable in this section. And they also look for your rank apart from your GPA, and they do understand that our GPA scale is different from their GPA scale, and more than you can expect, they have an extensive knowledge of how international colleges and their GPA systems work. So you don't need to worry about that. There's a section for awards and honors that you've received while in college. So all the scholarships that you get, all your awards, be it sports or extracurriculars or any sort of award and honor that you've gotten, is going to be adding a lot of value to your application here. And then you have an experience section, which is very, very extensive. As deferred MBA applicants, they understand that we don't have full-time experience as yet. So they ask you to fill details about your internship, what role you were in, how many people reported to you, if any, what is the size of your company, what is the, is it like a Fortune 500 company or not, what is the, there are also some applications which ask what are the challenges you face, what is the impact you created, and all that for every internship position you've held. So that is the kind of detail up to which these applications can go. So the experience section is, again, usually in applications, they say essay is the largest chunk. Like if you're done with your SOPs or your resume, then the others is just like filling your biodata. But an MBA application, at least as I've seen it, is not like that. Every section has so many questions. Like as I said, just your experience section has so many questions on every role that you've held. So those will take a good number of days to even fill. After that, there's resume. Typical business resumes are one page. So I had a very hard time with the resume actually, because as I said, I've always had only technical roles. And even my projects that I've done are hardcore computer science projects, which like we publish in research conferences of computer science and electronics and all that. And so were my internship experiences. But when you see typical business resumes, though the points that you mention under your roles are like, I created this much of impact, this much of income, this much of profit, I saved this much. So I found it very difficult to quantify my impact, because that is not something we are used to doing, in a standard technical or research resume format. So I had to take some help for that. And that is something you have to keep in mind. Again, everything you do needs to be quantified in terms of the impact that you've created. And then there's essays, of course. Each college has very different set of essays, unbelievably. There are common threads like, why do you want to do an MBA and why from this school? What are your career goals and all of that, which are a common thread. But there is almost always an essay which is specific to the values of that particular school. So one school values team-based, teamwork. And so every school has their own values, but one school is very particular about the location it is in. So you need to, tailor your essays according to that and make it very, very particular to the school. So if you're applying to many schools, then you have to spend a lot of time for each of the school, because I don't think there is any essay that you can write the same for two schools. And it should be that way if it has to, stand out. Apart from that, again, they understand that you are college students, so they don't expect a lot out of you, or like, what is this, how have you turned over your organization you interned in, and things like that. They understand that we're all normal college students, and it's fair enough to write a very normal story. Like, I wouldn't advise exaggerating anything. And they also ask you questions like what was your favorite course in college and things like that. So those are also kind of essays which a few universities give, understanding that you are a deferred MBA candidate. So that's nothing you have to be afraid of that, oh, I should tell. So yeah, that's about the essays. I think one more section is LORs, which are very important. Um, some schools are okay with just one letter of recommendation. Some schools need two letters of recommendation, and usual MBA applications will prefer it from your immediate manager or someone in your company. But again, deferred MBA applications, they are completely okay with you getting from someone in the academia, so that works for them as well. For me, I took my letters of recommendation from my professor who taught me, as well as from my manager during my summer internship. Now, it's very, very important that they know about your business aspirations. They know what you want to do later, and they should be able to vouch for why you will be a great candidate in that school and later on, right? So when you take my manager during my internship, he was one of my mentors. Like, it was not just an internship relation that we had. Even during my internship, he was someone I could confidently tell my aspirations to, not expecting, oh my God, but I'm expected to tech work here. Can I talk about my business aspirations to him? So he has been someone who has been mentoring me in my process of the application itself. And I've always kept him posted on what I'm doing in life, like even after the internship. And I think it's important to maintain such relationships and not, suddenly go one day and be like, hey, I interned under you. Can you give me a recommendation? Because that will reflect in the recommendation. When someone has had such a consistent relationship with you and they know that you've been doing all this, and so you will be great in that school, the recommendations will turn out to be very valuable, as opposed to someone whom you just feed information at that particular time. That said, it's also important to coach your recommenders on how selective these schools are. This is not like your typical MS applications letter recommendation where they say, oh, this person did a project under me and they did this project very well. And they should not just talk about how good you were while working with them, but they should also tell why your goals are aligned with studying in that school. Like, just like how you have to answer why you want to do an MBA in that school, your recommender should have a clarity on why you are a great candidate for that school in terms of your aspirations. So it's important to always keep them posted and let them know, and maintain that sort of relationship. And if you see typical applicants to these MBA programs, they're all from consulting or finance backgrounds, generally not from STEM backgrounds. And their managers and people they're getting recommendations from usually will have an MBA already, probably from these schools you're applying to, which makes it all the more easy for them because their recommenders have been through these schools and they're used to giving a lot of these recommendations. So especially someone from NIT Trichy, I think in places they're working or our professors are not aware of the kind of recommendations and the kind of things that they need to write in it. So I think it's very important to coach your recommenders on that.
How did you choose to apply for the colleges that you did?
Okay. So I applied to 7 colleges. These are called the M7, which are the top 7 ranked business schools in the US. So for me, again, I did not know much about the different business schools or what to apply to. So my first filter was very easy. Which schools offer a deferred MBA? And it was these 7 schools. Plus, there was the University of Virginia, Darden, which is also a great school, whose application deadline was only after my results came. So because I'd gotten into the schools that I wanted to get into, I didn't apply for that. And there's Yale, which does not which does not offer a deferred MBA, but they have a program called the Silver Scholars Program where you can join as soon as you finish college. Again, that was not applicable for me because the whole point was I wanted to earn and save up before going for an MBA. So I think my and there are very few schools that offer deferred MBA. If you see, there are only like 8 to 10 schools on the whole. So one thing that worked for me was most of these applications are free. Unlike the usual master's applications process, which have a particular application fee in dollars, which amounts to significant amounts when we convert, like we do always. only a couple of the applications I applied to had an application fee. The others understand that you're college students, so they waive off the fee. So I thought I have nothing to lose, and I applied to 7 schools, which is usually a larger number. But if you should choose the schools, then things you should see are how good is it in the fields that you are interested in. So I want to be in tech, and I see that Wharton has a special program where you spend an entire semester in San Francisco and be close to tech hubs. And I know that MIT is known for its engineering and technology, and it has a business school called Sloan. So these are the schools that I will be prioritizing. So one thing you have to see is how good is your school in your area of, in the field that you want to come out in the field that you have plans for later. And one more thing you should see is how international friendly is it, which I think most schools today are. I spoke to alumni and students from all these schools to get that perspective as well. That's also something you should do before choosing the school. So yeah, I think these conversations and researching about the schools did pay that for me, because again, monetary wise, most of these schools have the same fee structure only. So that's not another differentiator that you get to choose. The ROI is kind of same in most of these schools.
Okay, that was a very descriptive answer, and I'm pretty sure like many of them will be finding it useful. So moving on, when do you think is the ideal time to start preparing for an application? Like if you're in college, which semester do you expect one to have made up their mind and should start preparing?
Okay, so I myself decided it very late, honestly. So these applications start in November, December, January time, which is when you're going into your 8th semester. And so you have a lot of time until that. And 8th semester is usually when you're very free and you have all the time to give your standardized tests or give your fill your application and all that. So honestly speaking, if you have not decided until your winter of 7th semester also, it's fine. But make sure that you give your GMAT or GRE sometime before that, because that is one thing you can't, that's going to take at least like a couple of months to prepare and give and get the score and all that. So that's something you can't do in the last moment. So if you've already given the GMAT or GRE, then you have time until your 8th semester, Jan or Feb, to make up your mind to apply to those. At least that's what I did. I'd given my GMAT in December, and the applications I think start in Jan. So I started doing my applications then, and in fact, I had, again, I was very more than this was not what I wanted to do. A kind of confusion for me. It was more of, but these are Ivy League schools. Like, am I even something they're going to consider? Was the kind of confusion that was running in my mind, which made me delay my process a bit. Like thinking, is this even worth spending all the time? Because as I told you, it's such an extensive process. Like, I don't know if I should spend all my time on this or probably do another tech project and at least, do that well. So personally, my story was I started a bit late, but because I'd given the GMAT and fortunately or unfortunately, there were deadline extensions because of the pandemic, I had enough time to fill up all those. But ideally, you should be ready when the applications start. And the applications open around December or January. So if you're done with your standardized tests and you start the application the day it is released, you have all the time. And it's also important to give your recommenders a lot of time to prepare. And if you're going to apply to 7 schools, they can't finish everything on one day. So they also have to tailor their recommendation to that school. So you have to be decided by your 8th semester. And I think that's a lot of time. The process will happen during your 8th semester.
All right. I'm happy pandemic helped you at least. Okay, so what is that one thing that made your application stand out among the others?
Okay, so I think if there's no one thing, honestly, because what the business schools look for is if you really need an MBA from this school to achieve what you want to achieve, and if you will be a great candidate at that school. So, okay, so I've explained to the different application sections, right? So if you have to stand out, then you have to be great at how many ever of these you can. So my GMAT score was pretty friendly. It was more than the average of the school, and so that worked for me. Similarly, your transcript or your grades are important, and I have this philosophy of, get how much ever you can. Like, don't put peace and be like, I don't need to score and all. Like, if you can achieve a good grade, then you have to study and achieve a good grade. And I'm also not of the opinion that you have to focus on studies and make sure you get a 10 point every semester and not do anything else, because that's not going to help your profile overall. So, so yeah, I think my grades also helped me. Fortunately, I had decent grades. But to stand out and to, when everything else is fine, I think what makes you stand out is your story, right? So I had something which thankfully fell coherent in place now that I see after my 4 years, that I've always done everything in tech, and my aspirations are to be in a managerial role in tech, at least as of now. I always say that business school can change a lot of, it gives you a lot of exposure, and these might change later. And I've spoken to a lot of students who study there, and they've also gone with one goal and changed to another. But yeah, coming back to your question, at least this is my story for now on how my aspiration is in technology. I'm doing a major in computer science with a minor in management studies, which shows my managerial inclination. My positions of responsibility also show that I am capable of taking leadership roles. And as I said, I believe that a very strong focus on what you're doing, even if it's entirely the role of a programmer that I did in all my internships. I've had a variety of doing in a small startup, in a unicorn startup, in a company like Microsoft. And all these experiences are very valuable. I mean, you don't know it when you're doing it. I definitely did not when I did. But now when I look back and I do a lot of introspection, I think that what makes me stand out is my story. From where I started, after school, what I was, and how college has transformed me, and how all my experiences in technology have been coherent now that I look at it. And my aspirations also to be in a managerial role in technology also makes sense. So I think that entire story is what makes you stand out or gives them a reason to choose you. Like, a lot of people think that, you need to have had a startup already in college and make profits out of it and do community service and be in a lot of roles of leadership and do a sport and all of that. You might be surprised, but that's not what schools are looking for. In fact, they are looking for, why do you want an MBA from that school? So if you're already having, doing great in business, and they're going to be like, so why do you need our MBA now, right? So that is one question that I had, and a few friends of mine also had. I look very normal. I did very normal internships and very normal, I did not do anything out of the blue. So why are they going to take me? Well, they also understand that, and they are like, you're approaching them asking for education. And if you show that you need it and that you're a good fit, then you're going to get it. So yeah, I think my normal story surprisingly makes you stand out to show that you need an MBA from that school. Yeah.
All right. So how, according to you, can one upskill themselves? Like in college, how can you make best of the opportunities to be a better fit at any college?
Okay. So rather than upskilling, I think it's a very, very broad thing, because like, people with different interests have to upskill in different things, and I don't know about each and everything out there. But a general advice would be to seize every opportunity that you get, and like the different opportunities you have in terms of the clubs or different associations that our college is bringing in, or the great network of, the seniors and juniors we have in college, I think is our wealth. So one is to seize every opportunity you get, everything that you see, like a random WhatsApp message you get saying that this thing is happening and this is the eligibility. If you think you're eligible, go ahead, apply for it. Most of these things are free, and they're going to be amazing experiences. And another thing, not exactly upskilling, but that is important, is to form meaningful relationships, meaningful professional relationships, be it with your peers or your seniors and juniors, your club members, in places you're working, with your professors. Like, it's very, very important to have good relationships with all of them, not only because they're going to help you on paper, but in general also. Conversations with these people are going to make you introspect better, and when you have that clarity of thought only, you will be able to present on why you are a good fit for that school, or why you're a good candidate there. So a relationship with every professional person you're going to meet is very important, as well as taking every opportunity. There's no particular upskilling secret that I would say that this course will help, or good grades will help, because as I said, I've met my fellows, what do you call them, people who've selected for Wharton deferred MBA, and they're so diverse. Like, there's one person with a below average GMAT score, below average GPA, but he's founded like a couple of startups and all of that. So as I said, that's not what they're looking for, but if you need to make sure that you give them a reason to select you. Like, if you don't have anything out of the blue, then make sure that everything is going to be in favor of you. If you have an extraordinary achievement, then it's okay to not have a great GMAT or GPA. But if you think you don't, or it's always better to have a very good GMAT score, a very good GPA, like always try to get as high a grade that you can, right? There's nothing to lose in that. So yeah, take your academics seriously, take relevant minors and relevant courses which are going to align to your story. Don't do things just because a lot of people are doing it. Like, I think introspection comes first, and when you have that clarity, you will know what to do to upskill yourself to achieve your goal.
Okay. So how important do you think is considering your GPA while trying to work after college and then doing an MBA, or doing an MBA directly?
Yeah, so as I said, if you don't have anything extraordinary to show, then your GPA is going to show that she or he has been consistent in their academics and is capable of surviving all this competition and shining in that academic environment. So if you have a great GPA, then good. That definitely is not enough, but that's definitely not a sign of worry. But if you have a low GPA, which is usually a sign of worry, but they see that after so much of experience working, you created so much of impact, and you're able to explain that GPA later, that was not my measure of interest, or whatever personal reason you have, then that's totally acceptable. Or like, I was focusing on this other venture of mine, and hence I could not focus on my academics. That is completely acceptable. So I always say I'm very normal. So if you're very normal, then you have to have a GPA to show that you're capable. Other than that, if you're able to do something extraordinary or create impact through all the work that you've done, gaining experience will be useful, because straight out of college, the only data points that they have on you is your scores and your internships. And in internships, typically you don't create so much of value and all for the company. So if you can compensate for a lower GPA, because others are going to have a higher GPA and you need to show your better, then you have to show it through the years of your work experience. And the impact, like just working for 4 years is not going to help you compensate for your GPA. The impact that you've created out of that, even if it's a couple of years, is what is going to help you offset that.
All right. So you said that you should be giving GMAT or GRE, whichever you're interested, before December to help your application. So personally, which one did you choose, GRE or GMAT?
I chose GMAT, but the schools are very test agnostic. They don't differentiate between people who write GMAT and people who write GRE. I had a very personal reason why I chose GMAT, because in the summer of third year, like when I was doing my internship at Rubrik, I was preparing for GMAT, because I believe that for GRE, because I believe college is the best time to prepare for these standardized tests, because you get busy with work later and you might not have all the time to spent for that, I think you're at your cognitive best when you're in college, right? We're already used to so many exams and studying and all that. So I started preparing for GRE, and I found the quant to be pretty straightforward and easy. At least I was comfortable with GRE quant. But GRE verbal was very, very difficult for me, especially in terms of all the vocabulary that it involves. I did not have such a rich vocabulary, and I find my friends, reading and learning new words, which is very important for GRE. I also tried it, but I felt that, I just couldn't, and it was not very natural for me to learn English words like that. So I think I gave up after a while, trying to learn many new words. And then I saw GMAT. GMAT is quant hard. The quant is very tricky. It's, again, not advanced math concepts. As you know, like GRE, GMAT are very, very basic 10th standard level concepts only. But it's very, very tricky. There's this one twist at the end of the question, or you need to be very careful in seeing what every option means. And all of those trickiness were in quant. But because I think I'm very comfortable with quant, I was okay with that quant challenge. It's much harder compared to the GRE quant. But GMAT verbal, I can confidently say it did not need me to know even a single new word. So I was in my comfort zone there, but it requires you to have a grammatical intuition. So you don't need to know new words, but you need to know your grammar, right? So I felt I was better off at that than vocabulary. So I think you should decide, at least if you think your quant is strong and like quant is fine. If you think you have to work a lot on quant, then GRE quant is easier. And if you think verbal is anyway difficult for me, then you have to choose between learning a lot of new words or learning a lot of grammatical rules. Like if this comes, then this will come in the other part of the sentence. Like here's where the comma should be and all those. So you have to choose between learning grammatical rules, which is not easy if you don't practice a lot, or between learning all the English words. So I think it's only this test detail that matters, whichever you're comfortable with. The schools don't differentiate at all. I've seen all my fellow people who've been accepted into these schools come from totally different test ranges and different tests as well. So yeah, just take whichever is comfortable for you. If you think you're better at quant or better at verbal, which aspect of verbal are you more comfortable in? I think you have to make the choice. I've taken GRE diagnostics as well as GMAT diagnostic tests. So I'll definitely urge all of you to take both and then decide which comes more naturally to you so that it requires lesser prep.
Okay, so you went with your comfort zone. And
Yeah.
it bore its fruit.
It worked for me.
So how much do you think having or not having work experiences plays a role in getting admission or any application?
As it's a deferred MBA program, they understand that you don't have work experience if you're meaning the full-time work experience, right? So all of you are, like everybody applying to this program does not have full-time work experience. So I'm not sure if you know this, but a deferred MBA program can be applied to only by college students. You're not competing with people in the workforce. So, so I think that answers, because the typical MBA takes many, attracts many applications as well as selects a larger number of people who have work experience. But the deferred MBA program is a special program of each of these schools where only students in the final year of their college, be it undergraduate or postgraduate. If you're in your postgraduate, then you should not have worked before that. Basically, as long as you've never worked, like the criteria to apply to deferred MBA programs is you should have 0 work experience. So they are not going to, it's an apples to apples comparison only. They're not going to compare you with people from the workforce already. That would be unfair, right? So there's nothing to worry. They do look for very strong internships, strong in terms of the impact you create or the brand that you intern for, or how well it is aligned with your goals. Like if you have a strong community or social reform aspirations and you intern with a government organization, then that is seen as welcome. So it should align with your goals, or you should create an impact, a large impact, or it should be a good brand.
Okay. So, what's your take on MEM programs, Masters in
Yeah.
Engineering Management programs?
Yeah. So I have not researched much on that, but from what I know, again, if you're asking me why I didn't apply to that, then I think I answered that initially when I said I was very clear. I will not and cannot go for management education immediately, and I am of the opinion that experience is important. That said, if you're in a position right now where you feel that the management education is very important for you immediately, that uh, the role that you can work in now is not something you want to do or can do, and the pivot that you want to do to your dream role is going to be only through managerial education immediately, then I think you don't have an option but to choose MEM, because MBAs abroad don't accept you without experience. I think only Yale has a program which accepts you without experience, but others don't. And if you see the curriculum, I think MEM is much more technical than what an MBA is. And personally, because I have a very good technical background already, I don't want more technical knowledge, but the lack I feel is in my business knowledge. And to fill that, I want an MBA which is more all round in the sense of, all the aspects of a core business, from marketing to finance to accounting, and all that is done, which is not the case in MEM. It's more technology and engineering based rather than the core business principles. So you should be clear on what is lacking in you and what is your goal later. If you are looking to lead a company from the core, if you want to become an entrepreneur, then those concepts are very important to you, in which case you should take an MBA, because an MEM is not going to teach you those. But if you're clear that you want to be in a leadership position in technology in a company, an MBA is still suitable for you. But if you want to do that immediately, I think an MBA also opens a lot of options for you. Like if I get this education in finance and I'm interested in venture capital tomorrow, then I am open to do that, and I can do that if I do an MBA. But I think MEM does not give that possibility to you. So if you're very focused and if you want immediate education in management and technology is where you want to be, then MEM is also a good option. I think the duration of MEM is also much shorter than the complete 2 years of MBA. I think MEM courses are typically only around 1.5 years. So that's also there.
Okay, so now we are here with the last question. What is the fee structure of the college? Are you aware of any scholarships that anyone can apply?
Yep. So the fee structure of all these business schools are around over $100,000. So that is some money I have not seen in life till date. So scholarships and things like that are very, very crucial, at least for me, and should be for most people. So Wharton and Kellogg, when you apply for a deferred program, these programs are typically, for instance, in Wharton, it's called the Moelis Advanced Access Program, which is sponsored by an alumnus called Moelis, right? So these people fund this program, which means they give an amount of your tuition as scholarship, but that amount is hardly 1/10 or 1/8 of your fee. So there's still a lot more, which is why I think it's important to get a well-paying job. Like I wouldn't say get the highest paying job out there, but find a fit between what you like doing, what you're good at, and a job that pays well. Because the biggest source of financing your MBA is going to be this amount that you're earning between college and between the time you're matriculating. These programs give you 2 to 5 years, and some give you 2 to 4 years, but most give 2 to 5 years before joining. So I think that's enough time to gather at least half of the fee. And there are scholarships apart from what you get just because you're a deferred MBA candidate. There are international scholarships which are country specific. There are gender specific scholarships. There are industry specific scholarships also. Like there are special scholarships if you're from tech, if you're from finance and all that. these scholarships are things you have to apply to the year before you matriculate. If you decide you're going to start school after 3 years, then after 2 years, you have to apply for these scholarships 1 year before you matriculate. You'll be applying along with all those people from the workforce who are applying to the college itself at that point. So, and there are many companies, typically consulting and business companies, which offer sponsorship for their employees to go later. So at least Wharton did this session for all those who got acceptance on how to finance their MBA, where they did bring speakers who'd gotten sponsorship from their companies, who had leveraged all these scholarships. And so I think the common idea I get from all that is saving up during your employment is very, very important. While others who don't have education aspirations immediately might be, might be the first time they're earning and hence might spend it well, you have to be keen on saving it because MBA education is going to cost you. And then I think, so that's the first most important thing, saving up from your employment. And then you have to apply to these scholarship programs, which I think I should tell you. So you should not be like, okay, I've gotten an admit and I also have a good job, so I'm done. No, but you have to be active and do productive things in those 2 years also, so that when you apply for a scholarship, you have things to show that you have done even during work. So there are many, many scholarships. So Wharton has on their website itself a list, an exhaustive list of all scholarships just for international applicants itself. So I believe it's possible to fund a significant amount of your education. At least I need to do that. So I believe it's possible.
Okay, so with this, we come to the end of this episode of Sync series. Thank you so much, Shivani, for your time. I'm pretty sure your answers would give much needed experience to all of us who are trying for any hires or something. So,
thank you, Anmol. It was great talking to you.